I want to talk about the way they threw me in jail. So remember, this is after my son's outcry, when he was made to leave with his mother from Cook's Children's, where he just made an outcry against her, and he was made to leave with her. So the children are already gone, nothing at all going on, and I get a knock at the door. So I could tell by the knock that it was police. I don't care if you've never been arrested or not, like you know the knock whenever they knock. So when I showed up at the front door, it was an entire task force outside to pick me up. The first two guys came in the full riot gear, helmets, the whole thing. One of them had a riot shield with his gun drawn, and the guy next to him had a battering ram where he was going to batter down my door. These two guys were dressed in black. Like I said, full riot gear, said Fort Worth Task Force on it. Outside, however, there's probably another 10 cops. 10 that were all wearing green, still had helmets on, still had the full body armor and all that on. I believe they even had machine guns, not handguns, but they were all in the back and they were all dressed in green. These guys, however, did their job that day. But these first two guys, he thought he was going to grab me by my wrist and throw me down. So when I held strong, he starts threatening that he's going to shoot my dog. So when I look outside and I go outside finally and they start to arrest me, there are cop cars literally all over our neighborhood. They're parked in my grass, the neighbor's grass. They have a roadblock up the street, and they have cop cars everywhere. For me, for a person that's trying to protect his children from being raped and beaten, and they send the Fugitive Task Force for me. Then when they take me down there, I don't want to make it sound like everyone was bad. These guys in the green in the back, they stepped up. They stepped up to move these guys out of the way. They knew it was getting out of hand, and they completely de-escalated the situation, just like you're supposed to. So because of those guys, this arrest went pretty easy. I went down to the Tarrant County Jail. I went down to Tarrant County Jail, and they put me in the holding tank. This is a place where every 4 hours, everybody goes and sees the judge. Everybody except for me. I was stuck inside this concrete, nothing at all to sit on or lay on, except for concrete, for 24 hours. I sat there while everybody else saw the judge, and I never did. Every guard that was in there was confused. They didn't know why I was still there, why I'm not getting called out. Nobody could answer any questions. On the outside, the whole family was looking for me. You can talk about looking for me.
So this happened one morning while I was at work. Thank God for one of the nicer cops that Brad mentioned, let him use his cell phone to give me a call. So he calls me at work, tells me he's arrested. I lose it and start crying. So it's a quick conversation. He says he's okay. So I immediately call our lawyers, Jeff Branch was the main one, so I called him. And then I'm like, okay, who else can I call? I'm like, oh, Detective Rodriguez, let me call him. He can probably help me out. I've talked to him before on the phone about the situation and all. So I'm like, okay, I can call him. I had his number. So I called him. I'm like, hey, can you please help me? Brad was just arrested, and can you tell me who issued that warrant? He was like, yeah, let me pull up on my computer. So he's on his computer. He's like, well, it's just this wheel is spinning. It's not loading. So I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, thank you. I'll reach out to you a little bit later. And then later, I text him again. I'm like, hey, can you try again? Can you look to see who issued the arrest warrant? Never got a text back. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. So I don't know, a couple weeks later, we find out that it was Detective Rodriguez who issued the warrant for his arrest. I was more than angry. I'm mad right now talking about it. That lying POS could have just been up front with me on the phone and say, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm the one who issued the warrant. Instead of lying to me. Like, I went to him for help, and he lied.
This is the lead detective on Crimes Against Children unit that's supposed to be investigating all these horrid rape and abuse that my children have been going through, and he had me arrested.
Yeah.
He had me arrested. And then we found out that the DA, Sharon Wilson, was the one pushing charges. 2 to 4 years per child.
Per child. And it's a felony per child.
So get back to the court, get back to jail. So I'm in jail for 24 hours laying on this concrete. Finally, they call my name and tell me I'm moving. So I'm thinking I'm getting out. Finally, I'm gonna get out. I haven't had a phone call, hadn't had anything to eat, I got nothing. So finally, I'm getting out. Nope, they moved me upstairs to Max Security 3 jail. It's like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. in the morning, something like that. Nobody's moving in the pod. So I go to put my stuff down in this pod, and it's a 6-man jail cell. 5 Hispanics and me in a segregated jail. So I'm trying to put my bunk out, trying to be quiet. And this guy says, hey man, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. And he says, are you white? I'm like, yeah, I'm white. He's like, you can't be in here. you can't be in this jail. You can't be in this cell. This is a segregated jail, and this is a Hispanic jail cell. You can't be in here. You need to tell them outside, the guards, that you can't be in here. I said, hey man, I've been laying on concrete for 24 hours. I'm laying down. Do whatever you guys are gonna do, but I'm gonna lay down. He said, all right, man, well, as soon as you get up, we need to go out and talk to the guards. I said, okay. As soon as I went outside, I found out there's a phone. Finally, I can call my wife. So I'm gonna try to call my wife. And immediately, 2 Hispanic guys came up. One took his shirt off and said, let's go, old school. And he starts walking to a jail cell. So my cellmates tell me to come in there in that jail cell. I've got to fight. I got to fight or I'm gonna be fighting all day. So I walk in, those guys, nobody knows what jailhouse rules are, but this is not how it's supposed to go down. They let it be a one-on-one fight. Nobody jumped in. Nobody did anything at all. They took this guy out. I'm out. So finally he's like, hey man, we still got to talk to the guards. You got to get out of here. I don't know what's going on, but what they're doing to you is so wrong. They're trying to hurt you in here. So you need to go tell the guard. So I walk out and they're finally giving trays, finally food. So I go up and get my tray. I go to walk down with it, and a black guy comes up to me. And then he tells me the cookies are his. I already know this whole game, so no, those cookies aren't yours. So here he goes. He's going off to a jail cell. The same Hispanic guys that should have already beat me for what's like me even being in their cell in the first place, tell me, you can't go in that cell, man. They'll hurt you in there. Do it in our cell again. So we go in there and I have to have my second fight since I've been in here. This one, there's a little bit of a mess on the floor. These guys that should have hurt me are cleaning up the blood on the floor to get this guy out of there to protect me for some reason. So finally I go out and the guard is calling me anyway. Good, man. Finally I'm going home again. Nope, this time they put me on a chain gang. They get my ankles and my wrist to a line of people and we're all handcuffed together. We get put on a bus. So they're sending me over to a place called Green Bay, another jail that's here in Fort Worth, and this time they're going to send me to a max security 4 jail cell. So while we're driving, this guy's asking me like, hey man, what's up with your paperwork? None of this makes sense. Why are you getting moved? Why are you even here? We can't find you in the system. I don't know what's going on. So when we get there, they take all these other guys and move them into their cells like they're supposed to, and there's a mix-up with the paperwork. Green Bay doesn't have that I'm coming there, but Tarrant County Jail has that I'm going there. So this guy and both of these guys from different jails are sitting there saying that nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense on this. We're going to have to move this guy back and find out what's going on. Finally, they got the process in order to get me going home. She had to come pick me up, I think at midnight that night. I finally got to go home. Then, whenever we come home, not long after being home, they put a surveillance camera up on a pole, right on our house. And then they started coming around the house all the time harassing us, knocking on my neighbor's door, asking my neighbors what's wrong with me, trying to get me to come outside, asking why am I making terroristic threats. There has never ever been a terroristic threat. I always say this judge and this Lindsay Newell, the amicus attorney, they belong behind bars for crimes against children. I have never ever made a threat, never. And I'd like to know, like, from Greg Abbott and people that would want to know about what they're doing in Tarrant County, how much money would that cost? How much money would it cost to send a task force to pick me up, a protective parent, the whistleblower of what they're doing? How much did that cost that day to have all that task force out and pick me up? How much did it cost to put surveillance cameras on our house? How much did it cost for people to come and harass us in our neighborhood and our neighbors? How much would all that cost? I'd really like to know if Ted Cruz or Greg Abbott or for all of them, if they know that's what they do in Tarrant County, if that's part of their tactics, part to scare you away. If you're not going to shut up, we'll shut you up. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. That's what they do, and nobody knows that's the way the family court system works. That's how they keep you in it. They keep you in this spider web, and then if you start speaking out, they'll throw you in jail. They'll throw you in jail to try to get you to go away. If they can't break you through finances, if they can't break you mentally, they'll throw you in jail and try to break you that way.
Well, let me ask you something. This business of getting put into a Hispanic tank with Hispanic men who object to you being there and they make you fight, do you think that could have been done as social engineering to show that you were violent, and then that way your security status would have been changed from just being a docile prisoner who shows no outward affect to a violent person with racial hatred for black men or Hispanic men, and so this makes you a very dangerous guy? I mean, it feels like you got a little bit manipulated there. Do you have an opinion about that, or do you just see that just
No.
say la vie? That's the way it is when you're in jail.
That's a mistake they don't make. They don't make those kind of mistakes. They know to keep people of their own race in their own jail cells. They don't make that kind of mistake.
So you do consider that social engineering?
I consider they did not think I was going to leave that jail cell. They thought I was
knew
going
what
to
they
be
were
hurt.
doing by putting him in that cell pod.
They thought that I'd be hurt, and God moved. I always say it. God moved because those guys had no reason at all to protect me. Those guys had no reason to clean all that mess up
With
Those
their
guys had-
clothes
with their own clothes,
and towel.
just so it wouldn't be on me. Those guys had no reason to do any of that kind of stuff. In fact, they should have been beat up because I beat one of their own. So they should have been beat up themselves. That's the way jail works.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Very enlightening. And Mrs. Lamb, you got a lot of soul.